Plato and Brahmanical Ideas by H.P. Blavatsky, read by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. This piece is an extract from Old Philosophers and Modern Critics. Let us see how the Brahmanical ideas tally with the pre-Christian pagan philosophies and with Christianity itself. It is with the Platonic philosophy, the most elaborate compend of the abstruse systems of ancient India, that we had better begin. Although 22.5 centuries have elapsed since the death of Plato, the great minds of the world are still occupied with his writings. He was, in the fullest sense of the world's interpreter, and the greatest philosopher of the pre-Christian era faithfully mirrored in his works the spiritualism of the Vedic philosophers who lived thousands of years before himself, with its metaphysical expression. Vyasa, Jaimini, Kapila, Patanjali, and many others will be found to have transmitted their indelible imprint through the intervening centuries by means of Pythagoras upon Plato and his school. Thus is warranted the inference that to Plato and the ancient Hindu sages the same wisdom was alike revealed. And so, surviving the shock of time, what can this wisdom be but divine and eternal? Plato taught of justice as subsisting in the soul and as being the greatest good of its possessor. Men in proportion to their intellect have admitted his transcendent claims, yet his commentators, almost with one consent, shrink from every passage which implies that his metaphysics are based on a solid foundation and not on ideal conceptions. But Plato could not accept a philosophy destitute of spiritual aspirations. With him the two were at one. For the old Grecian sage there was a single object of attainment, real knowledge. He considered those only to be genuine philosophers or students of truth who possess the knowledge of the really existing in opposition to mere objects of perception, of the always existing in opposition to the transitory, and of that which exists permanently in opposition to that which waxes, wanes, and is alternately developed and destroyed. Beyond all finite existences and secondary causes, all laws, ideas and principles, there is an intelligence or mind, nous, the spirit, the first principle of all principles, the supreme idea on which all other ideas are grounded, the ultimate substance from which all things derive their being and essence, the first and efficient cause of all the order and harmony and beauty and excellency and goodness which pervade the universe, who is called by way of preeminence and excellence the Supreme God, the God over all. It is not difficult for a theosophist to recognize in this God A, the universal mind in its cosmic aspect, and B, the higher ego in man in its microcosmic. For, as Plato says, he is not the truth nor the intelligence, but the father of it, i.e., the father of the lower manus, our personal brain mind, which depends for its manifestations on the organs of sense. Though this eternal essence of things may not be perceptible by our physical senses, it may be apprehended by the mind of those who are not willfully obtuse. We find Plato stating distinctly that everything visible was created or evolved out of the invisible and eternal will, and after its fashion. Our heaven, he says, was produced according to the eternal pattern of the ideal world, contained, like everything else, in the dodecahedron, the geometrical model used by the deity. With Plato, the primal being is an emanation of the demiurgic mind, nous, which contains within itself from eternity the idea of the to-be-created world, and this idea it produces out of itself. The laws of nature are the established relations of this idea to the forms of its manifestations. 2000 years later, we find the great German philosopher Schopenhauer borrowing this conception when stating that these forms are time, space and causality. Through time and space, the idea varies in its numberless manifestations.